I am Logan Garagozzo, and I will be analyzing Apple. I chose to analyze Apple simply because of how relevant they are to me personally and essentially everyone within the United States. Personally, I own a lot of their products and I use them daily. Within our community, you walk into any lecture hall, as I'm sure you know, and at least 75% of the computers are Apple, and pretty much everyone uses an iPhone nowadays. So I really wanted to get a deeper understanding of where Apple sits in the market. So I'll be analyzing Apple to determine their market strengths and weaknesses. I'll use a SWOT analysis to get a broad look at their footing in the market, and then I'll use Porter's 5 forces to get a closer look at Apple's market position. With that analysis, I'll determine the future outlook of Apple and potential opportunities and liabilities within their business. My SWOT analysis. SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This gives a really good broad overview, as you know, of where a company sits within the market. So their strengths: Apple currently dominates the personal electronics market in the United States. Out of the 13 phone manufacturers in the United States, Apple accounts for 46.9% of phone sales. Apple also has the dominant software with the younger generation, where approximately 84% of teens prefer iOS. A more subtle strength that applies to Apple is their silicone chips, which is the M1, M1 Pro, and M1 Max. Those chips offer 3.5 times better performance than the competition, and they provide about double the battery life of the competition. To give you a brief explanation of what these M1 chips are, instead of using the traditional chip with 36 pins on the bottom, it's a silicone chip. So first, silicone transmits the electronic waves that feed information far quicker. Also, being on a silicone chip, they took all the different pieces on the motherboard, like the RAM, the graphics card, and the processor, and they're able to put it into one chip instead of like 6 or 7 chips typically, which makes it faster because they communicate easier, and saves battery because there's less intensive work from all the different chips. Weaknesses: Apple currently has a better processing chips with its M1 series. However, Intel just debuted their first silicone chips, which will rival Apple and likely take up some of their market share. Apple also has a weak grip within schools and university, where Microsoft reigns supreme. Opportunity: Apple could put its M1 chips in iPhones, propelling its processing power of the iPhones far past competition. That's because the M1 chip is just so small. Threats: Apple, now being the biggest firm in the world, has looming legal issues and legal restrictions with the federal government. They've been talking to Congress about monopolistic laws for a while now, and something will happen eventually, I'm sure. Apple is the most expensive option across the board in personal electronics as well. Porter's 5 forces. Those 5 forces are competition in the industry, potential of new entrants, power of supplier, power of customers, and the threat of substitutes. So competition in the industry: Apple has fierce competition from every angle with 12 other firms in the United States in direct competition. Potential of new entrants: there's not much potential for new entrants. The industry is cutthroat already, with a massive barrier to entry, one of the largest second to car manufacturers. Power of suppliers: Apple has one of the strongest supply chains due to economies of scale. They own almost every piece of the supply chain, which helps keep their costs low and their profits high. Power of customers: customers simply have no power with Apple. Apple, being the largest firm in the world, kind of can do what they want, and they're the most expensive option, and they still outsell every individual competitor. Threat of substitutes: the threat of substitutes is the largest threat to Apple, because they're in such a cutthroat market with lots of competition. If one of their competitors can make an advance quickly, Apple could lose all of their market share overnight, essentially. In conclusion, Apple currently does have a stronghold on the personal electronics market. Their largest threat is the threat of substitutes. I think that they can move into schools to gain market share. That they're already basically in schools with the hardware. They need software that works for organizations such as a school or large businesses. Overall, they sit in the driver's seat with personal electronics. However, they have lots of competition, and the threat of substitutes is their largest challenge. Here are my sources. Um, throughout this project, I got to take a deep dive into everything Apple does. So I got to learn more about those M1 chips. That fascinates me how it's done. I also got to learn a little bit about their supply chain and how they own everything except for one manufacturer in China, but they provide about 60% of the business for that manufacturer in China. So they essentially almost own it. It was really cool learning about Apple and understanding how they operate as the largest firm in the world, the largest company in the world. And I'm excited to see what they do from here. Apple's obviously known for coming out with something that's light years ahead, and I can't wait to see what's next. Thank you.